Coming up in this episode.
I get it in my comments all the time. I want a man that's emotionally available and emotionally deep and connected and is able to be in his feelings. I'm like, then you want a girlfriend. Women have been told to fear masculinity through narratives. I mean, we've seen this. Masculinity is seen as the oppressor and the feminine as the oppressed, when it's not that simple.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast. I'm Joel Rafidi. I've got my co-host Yerasimos with me as always. Today we got Jaguar Heart returning for his fourth appearance on Here for the Truth. He was also the first ever guest on Here for the Truth. And we're diving deep into like pretty important, at times potentially complex conversations about masculinity, about relationships, about masculine and feminine dynamics, about some things that have been, hidden under the radar in our society and our culture. And, I think all these conversations ultimately are really important to have. Sometimes they can be taboo, but I think that's a core essence of kind of what Here for the Truth is and what we've built across these number of years. So welcome to the conversation. We love talking about a diverse array of subjects, whether it's psychology, philosophy, conspiracy. And here we are today talking again about one of our favorite topics, and frankly, one of the most important topics, relationships.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When we look out into the world and we see the state of relationships, like I just feel like a lot of people are unhappy. They're not fulfilled. And so when you see that, you go, well, what is the underlying problem? What is the root of the problem? And this is where you have to have those difficult conversations, and you have to explore all the reasons why and be open to dancing with the questions that come up. So I love that we have Jaguar on again. I love what he's about. I love the work that he's doing. I'm really looking forward to everyone listening to this conversation.
Yeah. Curiously, I turned 35 a few weeks ago on November 22nd. And the day after, on the 23rd of November, like I'd heard about this book, Iron John, previously. It's called Iron John, a book about masculinity by Robert Bly. But on that day, for some reason, I just decided to buy it on my Kindle and start reading it. And then within the very first chapters of this book, I think it was in like the first 5 or 6 pages, it says, most men will come to see the truth of this book at the time that they turn 35. And it's just like, what the hell is that? Like so many of these moments and these synchronicities. And it's just never ceases to put me into amazement. This reality, what it means to be human, what it means to have consciousness, what it means to co-create, what it means to relate to the mystery. And for me, it's like, this is what it's about. And these are the kind of people that I think we really draw into our podcast. This deep curiosity of the mystery and where that leads you and what happens when, you move away from this idea that life is an accident, that you are an accident, that life is just random chaos and that you lack purpose, because there's signs all around you constantly that life is beckoning you towards the right allies, the right information, the right knowledge, always at the right time. And I think life really becomes beautiful and awe-inspiring when we can fully embrace this dance between self and between mystery, and be open to the idea that literally nothing that occurs is accidental and everything holds a deeper message, even if it's incredibly painful in the moment. There is a deeper lesson to be gleaned, which is unique to your personal journey. And, it's this underlying heroes mythology which inspires us day in, day out. It's the basis of our program, Rise Above the Herd, as well. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's really important to be reminded of that.
Well said, bro.
All that being said, guys, please enjoy this conversation with Jaguar Heart. Jaguar Heart is a men's coach that helps separate men from the mother construct and feminine dynamics. And a quick tidbit about Jag, he was actually our first ever guest here on Here for the Truth, way back on episode 3 in June of 2021. So we recorded 2 solo episodes before that, and then Erasmus and I were like, let's have a guest on. And Jag happened to be that very first guest. He also joined us previously on episode 66, being a high value man in a dysfunctional society, and episode 180, the narrow gates and the end of dogmatism. Jag, my bro, welcome back, man.
Thanks, fellas. Good to be back. What an intro. I can't believe I was the first guest.
You were the first guest, and you were also the first guest in Friends of the Truth as well, I think.
Yeah, I think I was. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I was. Yeah. Awesome.
Setting trends, Jaguar.
Was that 5 years ago now? It must have been 5 years. Close to 5 years at least, I reckon.
Yeah, 2021 was the pod.
Crazy.
So yeah, and then a year later was the community. Yeah. It's amazing.
And I remember after that episode, we jumped on a live together on Instagram. Erasmus and I always laugh about this. And your Instagram grid was like perfectly curated. Like every post looked the same. Like it looked like you'd never done a live before. Then we jumped on a live together and you posted it. And the title was just Live One. And
I love it, dude. I love it. Straight to the point.
That's
so good.
That's classic. That's so good.
What's happening, bro? What's going on in your life?
Oh man, it's I think we connect about once a year on average, I reckon now, because I think this is number 4.
Mhm.
We're at about 5 years since we did the first one. So yeah, a lot, man. You know, marriage soon in the next 6 months, kids hopefully next year. So yeah, it's moving up. It's moving up. The work stuff is probably what we're going to get into, I'd say, with splitting from the mother and stuff like that and those sorts of topics. But man, it's the biggest thing has been health. I took a major hit in my health the last couple of years. And that's been a real interesting journey to go on. So we can sort of go through a few things. It just depends on where you guys want to go. But apart from that,
I don't mind unpicking that a little bit. Like what happened with you?
So I got out of a relationship a couple of years ago. It's about 3 years now. And I ended up with really bad PTSD from the relationship. So most people associate PTSD with you hear a kickback on a car and then you're under your desk or something like that, or you can't operate. But how it operates when it's CPTSD, so when it's CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, you can't actually identify the original source trauma. And my health went downhill really bad from being in a relationship where it was a constant push-pull. I was being gaslit all the time and manipulated, and my health got so bad that a number of issues started to come up. And one of them was I would lie down and my head would feel like it's been electrocuted. That was one. I had insomnia for 5 months. I lost around 10 kilos of muscle and just general weight, like I was severely underweight. I wasn't eating properly. I was completely shut down emotionally. And when I got out of this relationship, I understood and discovered like what I was interacting with, which, you know, I'm not a psychiatrist or qualified to diagnose, but narcissistic personality disorder. And I actually I worked with Richard Grannon, who you guys have interviewed before, and 2 other top therapists in America. And I gave them all of the information that I had through text messages, exchanged everything. And I said, just tell me what I'm in here. And they all pretty much said the same thing with minor variations. One said malignant, another one said psychopathy, whatever. So anyway, I went through this. And then during the time when I'd discovered this, my father died, best friend died, and then Godfather died, all in a 6 to 8 week period.
Wow.
So I was really put through it. Yeah, I went through it. And I could sit there now and say that was part of the splitting from the mother, splitting from the father, the commencement of differentiation and individuation. But my health took a huge hit. And I had to start to climb my way back essentially from that. So I started doing EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization response, I think the R stands for, where you'll sort of use your eyes and follow the finger or tap your shoulders. And it took me 30 sessions in 1 year to clean that up. Most of the time EMDR is 6 sessions, and that's how bad I was. It took about 30 sessions to get to it. So I came out of that. Everything was pretty good, but my health still wasn't quite there. And then I started to go into severe burnout, similar like electrical shocks in the head, but not quite the same. It was more sinusy. And then I discovered that I had black mold poisoning and chemical poisoning as well from a house that I was living in. So then I found an iridologist in California who looked at my eyes and found everything that was going on. And I had diverticulitis, chemical poisoning. My lower back was out. I could barely walk properly. My knees were pretty shot. It was a whole thing. And then it culminated in me not being able to get out of bed in the morning because I would wake up with the most severe hangover I'd ever experienced. And I used to party. Like, my nickname was the Wolf of Wall Street guy 10 years ago. So I used to give it a shot. And these hangovers that I'd wake up with, and I don't drink, I don't touch alcohol, but I'd wake up and I couldn't even open my eyes. I could barely get out of bed, and I just had to get up to get to a cold shower. That's how it would operate. And I fell into despair. I fell into despair, which was a really strange experience to go through. But I remember thinking, I was at an airport and I said, I could see how people with long-term chronic illness would want to kill themselves if they're just like this all the time. I wasn't thinking that about myself, but I was in despair. It was quite hard. And then this woman that I found, an iridologist, gave me some custom amino acids, which started rebuilding my system. And now I'm 60, 70% better. So it's been a journey for the last 4 years or so. It's been a very, very intense journey for me. So
Yeah.
now on the other side of it, after doing the emotional and psychological work, and then the physical work, my reward has been a really beautiful relationship with Joelle. That's so peaceful. Like, without her, it's, I say this all the time, the right woman by your side will change your life. The wrong woman will take you to hell, but the right woman will really sort her out. And she's been great. So she was kind of my reward for all the hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really sorry you went through all that, man. That's obviously super intense. Hey, I want to get real for a second. And because I think it'd be really important to talk about it for the audience.
Yeah.
Like, during this period of you not being in the most ideal relationship, of you experiencing despair, etc. Like, you were an established men's coach, which like even briefed into like relationship coach.
Yeah.
What was happening within you? Is there any form of dissonance or imposter syndrome where it's like, wow, I'm teaching certain things, yet my shit ain't together in any capacity?
Well, so with the men's coaching stuff, I would look more towards, and it's a good point. That's why I just own everything publicly. So I don't pretend. I was never pretending that I was good all the time. I was quite open about it. And I wasn't really doing relationship coaching back then when I was in that relationship. It was more, that was a bit more subconscious programming and masculinity, just pure masculinity. And I wasn't doing health coaching either. So if I'd been doing health coaching and then teaching people how to be healthy, that wasn't it, right? But what I was doing was still getting up for every session and showing up, providing, doing all of that, which is one of the things that I'm a proponent for, when some days I'd have to drag myself out of the office after a session. So one of the things that I find really important is you've got to walk people through things that you've walked through yourself. None of the stuff that I do, I haven't walked through myself. So relative to that, what I was going through was splitting from the mother. That was the core thing that the whole thing was about. And so once I got through that, now that's what I do with men, because I know the process intimately. I think narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder is an initiatory concept that has been developed by nature in order to break us free from anything that is part of the false self. Could there have been some dissonance there? There was dissonance there. I was in cognitive dissonance with the previous relationship, 100%. And that's, working with Richard is how I learned to get rid of it. So there were elements there for sure. And it's a good question around asking that. And that's why I'm like, if you're choosing a coach, make sure they've walked through what you're trying to walk through. So yeah, it's a really good question.
Hey, Jag, also, I'm curious, like, when you met your current partner and as you were going through this, like, how did she show up? And where is that fine line when you're, let's say, dealing with something chronic, where you don't want to kind of fall into the boy mode and go, just take care of me because I'm not feeling well. And yet you have a partner who's there for you and supportive, like, what is that fine line and how did you experience it? Especially as you just said, you were kind of, this whole initiation was part of even for you separating from the mother.
Yeah, look, it's a really good question as well. And honestly, I had to support her more in the start than she needed to support me. When we got into the relationship, she had a 90-day cycle, right? From like working, stress, all of that. I still had a pretty high capacity at the time. So I said to her, I would look at her at the end of the day, and her eyes would be bloodshot. And it would look like, when someone just wakes up, she'd look like she just woke up at the end of the day. So I would say, come on, let's go down to the beach. Let's go for a beach walk. Let's get into nature. Let's get you out of here. And then after about a month, I said, I can't really sit around just watching you go through this. This is having an effect on you. I said, if you want to quit, I'll give you the same amount of income if you want until you find something that you want to do. But, your health is taking a massive hit. She had 16 hours sleep debt, 90-day cycle, digestion issues, all of that. Once we got her out of that, within 2 months, she started to drop down into a 34, 35-day cycle. The whole last 12 months has been around her just healing herself. Now, that doesn't really answer the question, but in the start, it was more about me helping her because I've got pretty deep reserves to be able to get through it. So I don't really collapse emotionally and go, I need you to hold me, etc. She goes, well, how can I help you that would make your life easier? I said, well, if you want, if you're not working while you're healing, look after the house. She loves to cook. She loves flowers. She loves making the home beautiful. So I said, just make the space beautiful. And that's what she does. And that alone was the thing that helped me. So I don't really, unless it's a big thing, take it to her. Most of the stuff I just deal with on my own, because I find that for me personally, and this isn't a set rule for everyone, I deal with most of the problems. My greatest reward in life is taking care of her and our family. That's what I was just having this conversation a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Where, I used to be quite materialistic, and I liked that. It was a bit of a sort of status thing. And that's kind of all worn itself out. It's a nice byproduct, but it's not a focus. And I said to her, the most fulfilling thing I get is taking care of you and seeing you healthy. That's it. And so, there's been 1 or 2 moments where I was really frustrated because I was sick of feeling like shit. I was at 5 to 10% operating for so long. And I remember sitting out by the pool, and this is actually a pretty good way for men when they're having a moment for themselves. I was sitting out by the pool and Jo was sitting next to me and she had her arm around me. And whenever I'm like in a state like this, which rarely happens, I make sure that I'm not directing it at her by looking at her. I'm looking away from her. And I was like, and I had my hand over my face. I'm like, I'm fucking over it. I'm so sick of this. Which those that know me know that I'm not an overly emotionally reactive guy, but I was having a moment, and it was like one of maybe 2 this in the last 12 months where I was just so over it, man. I was so tired of it. And she just put her arm around me and put her head on my shoulder, and she didn't say anything. She didn't try to fix it. And I said, this has got nothing to do with you. This is just what I'm feeling at the moment. It's what I'm going through. This has been 4 or 5 years of just turmoil for me. And she just put her head on my shoulder and she's like, I'm here. And so it wasn't like, fix it, love me, help me, I'm weak. I was like, I just need to get this out, and made sure that I didn't look at her while I was doing it. I looked away so she didn't feel confrontational, because when you look at someone, it's quite confrontational. And so it's mainly about being able to have the capacity to move through it and go, all right, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know what I do to need to feel better. So I have a cold shower, I go do an ice bath, a sauna, I do some work, I show up, I help someone, I get some sunlight, I eat really healthy food, I go and train. I've got all the protocols in place. If all of that doesn't work, then if I get frustrated, I'll do something else. I'll take the dog for a walk. I'll go and process it in some sort of movement. And then if it just continues and nothing shifts, then I might have one moment like that where I'm just like, I get quite frustrated. Frustration's probably the emotion that I deal with things through.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I deal with it.
How did you guys meet?
We met 2 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit before then. We used to see each other at our local cafe. And so we connected through there.
Cool. So because you mentioned it before, I'm just curious, this process, like, what did this initiation of like separating from the mother, like, what did it look like to you? How did it feel internally? Like, what were the mental processes that were going on, in regards to your relationship with your mother and how it showed up in your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so that's a big question too.
Yeah.
So the first thing I had to do is, what I realized is, and this is probably nothing new, but you guys would know, when you get information, you can read the information, but it doesn't land, and then it might land 6, 12 months later, and you go, that was that. So I remember so this person that I was with, and I just want to put a caveat here. This is not to tear her down or say anything bad. I got a tremendous gift from that relationship, but the truth is the truth. So she would like do push-pull stuff and idealize, devalue, discard, Hoover cycles, which is build up, tear down, break up, pull back in. So anyway, this was happening for a while, and I just went, if you do this again, I'm out. And she threatened the relationship again. And this was New Year's Eve 2022. Around that time, I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So anyway, I went down to Bondi and I went into a bookstore that I like to go and read. It's called Gertrude and Alice, and they serve coffee, and I used to sit in there for hours and read. Anyway, I walk in and there's a book on the floor called Healing from Toxic Relationships. I'm like, timely. Anyway, I start reading it because you're allowed to read while you're in there. And I see the idealized, devalued, discard, Hoover cycle. I'd never heard of it before. And I start to go into shock. And I'm sitting at the table, literally holding the book, shaking, like almost having a depersonalization experience. And I put it down, and I was at the table, just like not violently shaking, but shaking. Anyway, I had to get up because I realized this is what I was in. And I went out and sat on the South End Hill at Bondi. And I started reading again. I said, I've got to get through this. And I got to the hoovering cycle, hoovering named after the vacuum cleaner because they try to pull you back in. And it said, when the narcissist is done abusing you, they'll tell you what you want to hear. And the exact words in the book were, the narcissist will often say, hey, I'm ready to get married and have a baby now. And no word of a lie, on my unborn children that are coming in, on their life, I got that exact message within an hour from her. And I was like, she's like, I want a boring life, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, holy shit. And then all these pieces started to fall in. And my sister used to say to me, she's exactly like our mum, but I couldn't see it because my mum's extremely cruel, narcissistic personality disorder. Then all the wheels started to turn for me. And I used to liken myself to like a big pane of glass that had cracks through it. And this tight period that I went through when I realized it, because it almost feels like your world spins out of control when the cognitive dissonance lifts, to what Joel asked earlier. Cognitive dissonance is like you can only see the good, you can't see the bad, and they gaslight you to think all the bad is your fault, but all the good is their fault. And they get you in a spin and you can't see it, and you start to feel crazy. And so when you start to feel crazy, confusion is the basis by which they use to keep you off track. Then they break you, they kind of devour you, and then they move on to another supply. And I've seen this, like all her exes are like that too, which I couldn't see at the time either. So anyway, I started to look at this. I started to come out of it. And for a couple of weeks, I was really very fragile at the time. Like I felt very, fragile is the best word. I felt like I was going to break at any second. And then my dad died. And so I didn't really have too much time to go into that at the time. I was just like, oh. And then while I was in Sydney that week, one of my best friends from school who I was meant to catch up with, he kept dropping into my awareness. He died that week of an overdose, and I was supposed to see him. And he hadn't taken drugs for ages. He just went out one night, and that's what happened, and he died. And then when I got back up to Byron Bay, I found out my godfather died as well. My dad and my godfather were best mates. So all of this had happened. So I shut down, and I just started to try to process it. Anyway, as I started to see this, she tried to come back, and I'm like, I just can't really deal with this properly right now. I just have to get on with my work. I have to focus. Then a few months later, she went away, and I got a text message from her, and I went into the same shock that I did in January when I was in the bookstore. And that's where it all hit me. And I went, oh my God, this relationship's making me sick. And to go back to the book, the number one trait to know that you're in a toxic relationship is your health declines while you're in it. And all of the pieces just landed for me. I found a diaphragm breathing expert that unlocked my diaphragm, and I just grieved my dad and all of it for like a week. Then I saw all the pieces that were the same. So I snapped out of the dissonance. I saw it for what it was. It lost all its charge, dissolved or dismantled what was going on with the structures that I was in. And then I just saw it really clearly from there. And I try to help people see it these days too. This is what I said to Joel earlier, that I help men break free from toxic feminine dynamics. I saw you left the word out of there as well when you read that, Joel, earlier. Toxic feminine dynamics, right? That's what I help men break free from, right? Because when you see this is a large part in our society that's not really honored that much, is there is a really gnarly side to the feminine psyche that's quite cruel. It's very manipulative. It will tear down and destroy everything in its way. And all the men that I'm working with at the moment are in similar situations like this where they need to break free, but this is the initiation into manhood. When they don't split from the mother, life is going to make you repeat it through a difficult relationship. usually with a woman that's probably NPD or BPD, because they're very intense, to split you away from it so you can go into mature masculinity.
Just
Dude.
FYI, I didn't purposely not read it. I'd retype your message myself onto my notes and I just missed it.
Right, okay. I thought you might have left it out of there for
No,
viewing.
I've got no hang-ups around that.
Cool. So yeah, that was the journey that I went on through that, and it was the greatest gift that I've received, because it was my initiation. And I was warned. I was warned by a woman within a few weeks of entering this relationship. You could say she probably had some sort of psychic ability. And she said to me, and her exact words were, "This is going to be your initiation, and this is going to be," and I quote, "the hell beast you almost don't survive." And I didn't want to hear it. And that's exactly what happened.
So
But then it's like if you listened to her, you wouldn't have gotten the medicine that you needed, in a sense. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, thanks for letting me know, and I have to walk the path.
Yeah, and it would have just shown up again in someone else. I was meant to do it.
Yeah. So what did actually ending that look like?
I went, "You threaten the relationship, I'm done." And then she went into really interesting, right? So I did that. And then when you sort of end something with someone of narcissistic flavor, they go into what's called narcissistic rage, because you hit a narcissistic injury. So there was this whole sort of performance for the following week around it, where she was abusing me and all this other stuff, and that she was apparently in hospital with her throat closed up. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But then when I confronted her with the information about the narcissist, conveniently, she had a dream where she went to heaven and Jesus saved her, so everything she did in the past was now null and void. This is in a week or so after it. So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's what happened from there. And then it was a dismantling experience from there, seeing it, going through the stuff with my dad. My dad took the priority. So the breakup with her had already been done. So it was just kind of like, she goes, "Oh, I just want to be there for you. I want to help you. Can I just be your friend?" I'm like, all right, like I don't have capacity to really clearly deal with this right now. And then, like I mentioned, when she went overseas, I saw that that's what was making me sick. And just went through it, man. EMDR was the thing that really saved me. Like I had an amazing therapist that helped me. That helped me clear up all the CPTSD. And that was the thing that really saved my life, I think.
No, I appreciate you sharing, man.
Hey, bro. When it comes to separating from the mother, I feel like a lot of men deal with, smothering moms, or their so-called mama's boys. Maybe they're not dealing with like intense narcissistic, mother, but it's just like they have a mother who does everything for their boys, and what do you notice in men that have had that type of upbringing?
Yeah, you could say like men experience two types of wounds. The wound of smothering is one of them, or the wound of neglect. So the wound of smothering is like the devouring mother. And, we keep hearing this thing around, we live in this tyrannical patriarchy. And I've been saying for a few years, I'm like, we live in a collective devouring mother, or a gynocracy, which I've heard before too. And I saw this a few years ago, because when you try to erase masculinity, or you try to make men like women, then they start to associate themselves through the feminine lens. So when we have a mother that teaches the boy about feelings, and this is, thanks for that message the other day, Joel, about Iron John, because I started reading it again. And it says it in Iron John. It says when the boy is taught to relate to his feelings by the mother, he'll see his masculinity through a feminine lens.
Yeah.
Okay, so then his worldview becomes washed through the feminine lens. And so what will happen is he will have an easier time relating to his femininity over his masculinity. And so generally when you see the mummy's boys, they don't actually split from the mother. So they will still honor them over their wife. They'll still get them to do things. They'll seek their advice. Excuse me. They'll seek their advice about things. They'll qualify if they should be with a woman through the mother. So the mother still holds the matriarchal position. So it's an enmeshed relationship. I'd say it's, depending on the mother, it's usually very unhealthy. And quite often the boy doesn't always happen, but become quite spineless. He'll often become what's called a performative ally, which we're seeing that at the moment. We saw, what's his name? He reviews books, fantasy books or something, and he was in his truck talking about one week how masculinity is a prison. And then I don't know if you guys saw it. And then he said, masculinity can't be defined. And that's just cosplay performative allied shit, which is taking on the plight of women, tearing down masculinity to gain favor and validation from women. This is what it turns into at its maladaptive end. So people think that the nice guy syndrome are bad for women. The performative ally is the worst. They're the hardcore male feminists that take on the plight of women and tear down men at the same time. That's what happens. That's the structure that it takes. Sometimes if you get the wound of neglect, which is what I had, then you become the bad boy, and then you don't really want to trust women and let them in because the trust has been violated. So one becomes a boundaryless state where you can't tell the difference between where the mother's spirit starts and the boy's does. It becomes a blurred meridian. So it's what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. It can be disastrous. The bad boy at least comes out fighting the mother, usually from day one. So it's like the dragon fight. You know, we see that in myth. We see that in Thomas Campbell. Tessarian talks about it. Jung talks about it. The Ouroboros. It's all about fighting the dragon. So if you go down the bad boy route, then you're kind of fighting the mother from day one. So they have an easier time breaking free from it. The nice guy has a more difficult time because they get all of their worth, approval, and validation from the feminine. So then maladaptively, they become a performative ally. Very difficult to break free from it at that point.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think about, I was raised with like a Greek mother, old school Greek, and I wouldn't say she was super smothering, but she was a typical, Greek mom in that sense. And there were definitely growth points that I had to move through. I remember when I first moved in with my first girlfriend, this was a while ago, many years ago. Like I expected her to fucking do everything and take care of me, because I had a Greek mom that did that. And then it's like I had to learn very quickly, like this is not the way things need to go, So it's got a lot of tough lessons, and I'm happy actually that I've kind of continued to work through them in my own way, especially before moving my mother out here. Fortunately, my mother never got in between my relationships, and I don't know if it's the language barrier or the consciousness barrier, but I was very like, my mother doesn't tell me what to do. But there were elements of like being nurtured by my mom that I, really, really loved and enjoyed, which I think there's some healthy elements, of course. It's not like I didn't experience neglect, so I'm grateful for that. And at the same time, there's a fine line, and it's like, how do I relate to the women in my life, and do I want them to fucking take care of me and nurture me, and if I don't feel well, like, sure, being supportive is one thing, but like me turning into like a little boy when I'm not feeling well, that's not ideal,
Yeah. And with a Lebanese helicopter mom, definitely experienced similar patterns, for sure. I'm curious. Are you familiar with family constellations in any capacity, Jag?
I know of it, but I haven't looked into it. Is that what Tiziano does? Tiziano?
Yeah,
Is that what he does? Tiziano.
Yeah. There's this concept in family constellations about taking the mother, which ultimately is fully accepting your mother as she is without trying to change her, and acknowledging that life itself came through her and fully receiving her.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, how does the dance look when it comes to that concept of embracing the mother in that aspect, yet the initiatory aspect of splitting from the mother, if anyone has thoughts on that dance?
Yeah, look, I start with the process of differentiation. So you have to become gender opposite first. That's the first part. I don't think that you can fully integrate, because I think it's a matter of splitting, then integrating. It's not about exiling. I think exiling is where it becomes unhealthy. And so you can love your mother. You should love your mother. Doesn't mean exiling, getting rid of her or never speaking to her again. I think estrangement is too common in our society. I think it's 25% of kids are estranged from their family at the moment. And I think that's down to more fragile victim culture and I got to protect my peace kind of mentality rather than actual very abusive mothers. And you can have a healthy mother. Healthy mother is defined, in my opinion, even though it's very broad, the child's health is about self-sufficiency. You just help them become self-sufficient. Like Erasmus, you probably had an element of self-sufficiency there. That's why your mum respects boundaries when she comes into your house. That's good. That's what you want. Whereas if the devouring mother doesn't let the child's expression come out at all, I worked with a guy that slept in the same bed as his mum for 27 years. Like that's not healthy,
Wow.
and it affected him really badly. Yeah. He's a nice guy, to no surprise. But what actually had to happen, he needed to split from her to become his own independent self. Becoming the independent self is what's most important, without actually being ingratiated or enmeshed with the mother still, where she's making all your decisions. So
Yep.
you can fully accept her, but boundaries are loving, in my opinion. And I always say that the person that doesn't respect your boundaries just reveals that they want to control you. But if someone's actually got solid boundaries and you respect them and they respect you, they should be a natural part of a relationship. So I think for what you mentioned, Joel, with that is you've got to split, establish yourself, and then you can fully accept your mother, in my opinion, as a separate being.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I agree.
I think that's why it's important. A lot of, like, I can only speak for the US, like first generation households, a lot of people don't leave the home. They don't leave the town. They don't go on their own, let's say, hero's journey. And so I definitely credit like moving away to university and having to live on my own and be on my own as something that helped in that situation, because you see it so often. It's like they're 25, 30 and they're just showing up for dinner every single night. They've never lived on their own. They've never gone on, let's say, some type of walkabout. So I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I might add is I think like accepting your mother in the family constellation sense is like an inward movement, like an inward relationship. Yet the initiatory process that we're speaking about is more of an external movement away in that sense, like both can kind of dance in that capacity. You can accept your mother deeply inwardly, yet still move away in a healthy archetypal manner.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think I look at it from behavior, emotion, and psychology. Right. So the psychological aspect for me is subconscious programming. So what I've seen is in life, we're meant to split. And as you said, Erasmus, go on a walkabout. This is why at around age, you could be 7, 8, up to about 15. There's going to be a form of exiling that happens. It might be bullying at school and cast out of the gang, changing locations in the world, a divorce in the family. At this point, what I've identified is there's a subconscious program of I don't belong, which activates. So then we start to modify and adapt to try to belong, as countering the I don't belong program. And I mean, it happened to me at school. I got expelled. My dad went to prison at 5. It was a lot of identity based on I don't belong. Then when you get a little bit older, as you said, going to university, that's another split, which a program activates, which is I'm on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if these aren't dealt with properly, what happens is we start to see the world through the eyes of a threat, and then life is dangerous becomes the way we see the world. Then we start to modify, we start to suppress, we start to not speak our truth. We've all been through this in the last 5 years around speaking up, right? We will start to become part of the herd, part of the crowd, and then we'll just want to fit in, all to try to counter the very things that got us into that position in the first place. So the psychological subconscious aspect is around that, and that's what we need to start identifying as the independent self, independent of the mother and whatever happens in the womb. Then emotionally, what we need to do as well by becoming gender opposite is actually learning the art of containment, starting to be contained with our emotions, not spilling out everywhere, not folding at the slightest inconvenience. I just posted in my stories yesterday a guy that, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or a friend, the guy came up to rob her with a knife and he just left her alone to get robbed, and he ran off and all these other men came over and saved her. This is someone that's emotionally and feelings led. What I've seen is that if a man is continually in his feelings all the time and led by his feelings, what's going to happen over a long term, that creates more rumination and anxiety, testosterone drops and cortisol goes up. So he becomes essentially more feminine and less male in that construct.
Hey, Jack, what do you think about this? Because I'm trying to relate it to myself, that when big things happen, that like I feel like I'm like a Zen master and I handle it. But it's like
Mhm.
little shit that annoys the fuck out of me. Like
Mhm.
like my internet stops working and things like that. And that's the stuff where I feel like I get a little bit more emotional. But like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
fires are encroaching on our home in Topanga this past year, I'm like, cool, I'll handle it. I'll hike back. I'll be in my home. I'll handle it if the fire comes. But then like the little shit is like the stuff that just gets under my skin. And I'm curious if you see that often. Is it a masculine thing, or is like obviously there's probably some areas that I need to kind of grow.
Yeah, I mean, daily stresses happen, but I would say that who cares about the little stuff? If you're solid during a fire in a life-threatening situation, that's all that matters. That's when it counts. Because if it's not life-threatening, it's just ego-threatening. And if it's ego-threatening, it's like, yeah, cool. Like, my internet's not working, or, they gave me the wrong coffee. Like, that's luxury, right? But if a fire's coming or someone's breaking into your house, happened to me last year, two guys tried to break into my house and I just kind of went stone cold and chased them out. But if someone cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, you fucking motherfucker, like that.
All right, cool. I mean, I figured, but I'm just like, because there's these things that happen during the day, man, like road rage and like just like bitching or complaining, like just because I don't know, like I want to. It's a luxury, I guess. But like
Yeah,
when the
yeah,
shit hits the fan, it's like, okay, it's go time, and I
yeah,
feel solid. So okay,
yeah. When it counts, it counts. It's like hard times don't create character, they reveal it.
okay,
That's the most important one, in my opinion.
yeah.
I won't push the buttons here. Moving on. I want to ask you a question. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about when it comes to this enmeshment with the mother, how does this carry forward in like the general masculine dynamics where like men basically live their lives like please women in a
Yeah.
sense? And it's like we've become so feminized in a way and so soft in a way that like it seems for the majority like the woman sets the rules or the container even unconsciously, like a man like has withdrawn himself so much and like constantly diminishes himself just to not push her buttons or to like
Mm.
keep things at a certain level of peace or civility, even when peace or civility might not be warranted anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's what we've been trained to do. We see it all the time. I get it in my comments all the time. I want a man that's emotionally available and emotionally deep and connected and is able to be in his feelings. I'm like, then you want a girlfriend. Women have been told to fear masculinity through narratives. I mean, we've seen this. Masculinity is seen as the oppressor and the feminine as the oppressed, when it's not that simple, and you look at psychology degrees now, a large part of it's critical theory and Marxist ideology. The narratives are just rampant in our society. And so men, in order to essentially get sex or validation or attention from the woman, thinks that bowing to the woman is what they want, when it's not. Their biology will switch on and they'll just go to the man that tells them no. That's why most women, or modern women, go for the bad boys. They like the bad boys because they can't be tamed, they can't be controlled, they're solid in themselves, they have their no. And the woman goes, I'm going to follow this guy, while you've got some other guy that works for 5 years to try to get into a relationship with her, and she'll go and sleep with a dude and have a one-night stand. It was so good. There was this, people kept telling me to watch Love is Blind, this modern season, whatever. And there was this
Which country?
African-American couple.
The US, was it US?
US one, yeah, the dumpster fire that was like the most recent season. And you can tell they psychometrically tested people to match him up. And there was a social worker that got matched up with a guy that was raised in a foster home. And you see them in bed talking about this because she won't sleep with him. And then he starts crying and losing his shit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she's
I watched this season.
yeah, and this is the nature of it. And he thinks that pandering, and she's like, crying is strong, emotions are strong, but yeah, okay, cool. She's not going to sleep with you. And then she tells him about guys in the club that she's met, that she slept with, that didn't mean anything. And it's like, this is everything I've been saying. Like, the biology is going to go towards the strong man. That's what the women want. And if you're crying all the time and emoting and acting like a child, and he was very manipulative, that guy too. He was using emotions to manipulate.
Yeah.
It's not going to win over the woman, and it's not going to fall into a natural biological state. But because, a lot of boys now, they come from single mother households. Exposure to too much feminine energy has a major impact on boys, and women just don't want to hear it. They think that all the bad comes from the masculine, when statistically the evidence shows that the biggest threat to our boys is an overexposure of feminine energy. You got movies like Disney and all that, which are all woke. You've got narratives which are of a similar vein. You've got therapists, 80% of them roughly are female. 70% of teachers are female. We're in the great feminization, and only biology can steer us back to the right way. And men are convinced psychologically that that's what's going to work, and it doesn't.
Yeah. I want to drop quite a triggering quote from Patricia Pearson. She says women commit the majority of child homicides in the United States, a greater share of physical child abuse, an equal rate of sibling violence and assaults on the elderly, about a quarter of child sexual abuse, an overwhelming share of the killings of newborns, and a fair preponderance of spousal assaults.
Yeah.
We don't hear
Yeah.
about it. We don't hear about it.
No, I've been saying it for years, man. I've been saying this for years. Childwelfare.org. Like, go to childwelfare.org, the NIS. I've been saying it for years, man, but no one wants to listen to me about it. The statistics are out. Like, the biggest threat to children and women. So we talk about, and this isn't to say, this doesn't like alleviate the stuff that
No.
men have done.
Yeah.
Right? This doesn't make it okay what men have done. By no stretch of the imagination does it mean, oh, you've done this, so we're okay, like they like to do. But we have to look at the statistics and the facts of it. And it's this kind of stuff where I've been saying it falls on deaf ears. And you'll present this to the mothers and they just don't want to hear it. They're the biggest abusers of children are the mother. So we look at women are the more vulnerable sex, but then they're committing the crime against the most vulnerable, overwhelmingly. There was the America First policy, which I was looking at recently. 85% of youths in jail come from single mother households. 55% of them reoffend. Like I said to a woman, she's like, "You guys are raping and killing us," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, you're raising them." You've got to look at the effect of what's happening, and that's not 100% universal, but we got to look at where these men are coming from, because a large percentage of them come from single mother households, and it's not to put all single mothers in with the ones that don't look after their children. But, that quote sort of sums it up. And it was great that's from a woman, because if a man says it, it's like the witch hunt goes on. And the sisterhood goes after you, man. The sisterhood is one of the greatest threats to women. No one hates women more than women. No one.
There was a book, I know Michael has talked about it. He's done episodes on Unslaved on it, that was written by, I think it's Phyllis Chesler, maybe, Women's Inhumanity to Women. And I know Michael does his own analysis of it and things that he agrees with and things he doesn't. But again, it's like it's not something that women want to talk about. And like I think it's because male violence feels more in your face. It's more overt, whereas female violence is covert. Like you'll have like the woman like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you," and then she'll go fuck your dude, like behind your back. So it's like it's different than just like seeing dudes punch each other or some more overt violence. So I think that plays a role in it as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does. And I saw it with Joelle. I got with Joelle last year, and man, her own boss brought it up in a work meeting that she should be careful about being with me because her best friend liked me.
It's a woman boss?
Female boss, in a work meeting, said that this guy is very dominant and you should be worried about losing your independence. Her boss said this in a work meeting. This is not someone that has an employee's. You can't do that for starters. Like the amount of things that she crossed the line within that, you could go to ombudsman and get a payout for that legally. But to do that, because her best friend was interested in me, then her best friend went ice cold. Like it was just, this happened multiple times when her and I got together. And it was like, oh yeah, the sisterhood's good when you're in the clique. And I think Michael talks about this with machophobia, how they start to worship the feminine instead of dealing with the fact that they hate their mother or don't want to become like her. And I just saw it. And, Joelle doesn't work. She's super healthy. She lives a great life. And her friends are always like, well, what are you going to do with your life? What's your purpose? You can't just live like this. Like trying to take away or create doubt in her mind about her own happiness and radiance and health. Why would you do that to someone if you're a friend?
I know.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's so manipulative too. I think that happens within the feminine very often.
The way the deeper patterns of like jealousy and envy operate is like, not spoken about enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a really great guy, the Tin Man, I think his account is. He talks about domestic violence. That's his main thing. And he talks about Erin Prizzy, I think the name is. And she opened up domestic violence shelters for women. And she was like, they're way worse than men. They're way more violent. It may not have the same impact long-term from the ability to hurt. But I worked with someone yesterday around this, and The woman said to him something along the lines of, "You got to take your beatings and shut up like a man." Think about that. Can you imagine one of you guys saying that to, or one of us saying that to our partner? Like, man, the double standards. You want to talk about equality. Someone sent me a funny one. It's like 50-50 on the bill. Like, what are you doing? 50-50 in divorce. It's like, let's go.
Yeah.
So these are, I do feel though, over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a big exposure of this narrative. I really feel that this has been a long time coming, and the exposure of the sisterhood as well. Like, women will lead each other to hell. Like, it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
All right, let's take the foot off the pedal on the women for a second. You give them a bit of give them a bit of a breather. So like a big part of also the problem when it comes to like men growing up in the initiatory process is like an actual lack of elder men who understand this on a deeper level and are able to guide the younger men. Like, who do they seek out? And I mean, Iron John speaks about this as well. Like, in modern societies, sons grow up to be highly suspicious of their dad because dad is out of the house all of the time. The child, for the most part, has no idea what dad does with his free time. Dad isn't there. And so there's this suspicion that arises about, where is dad? What does my dad do? And for me, like, one correlation that I made in kind of diving into this is like, obviously conspiracy is warranted. Like, this, the big part of this, the foundation of this podcast is like exposing some things that are hidden on the in the external. But yet there's a faction of it that can go too far, which just seems hell-bent and driven on undermining all structure, undermining all authority, poking suspicion in any model, any system, regardless of whatever it might be. And I feel like these things are connected, like the initial suspicion of the male drives and develops into this down the road. But anyway, curious on your thoughts and opening up this conversation in general about, you know, where are the sincere, grounded, elderly men who have been through this process that can guide.
And proper rites of passage that I feel like don't exist in the modern world in the same way.
Yeah, I think, look, that's a great point. Most of them died in war. That's the thing. Someone asked me a few years ago on a podcast, why are all generations so traumatized? I'm like, how do you traumatize a generation? You start a war. You send all the alpha males, all the strong males over to war, so then they can't lead and initiate the younger ones. They're stuck at home. Their fathers leave. Of course, there's going to be a collective suspicion when it's like, I'm 4 years old and dad leaves me and goes to die somewhere else. Why did he leave me? You know, I don't think that's so much conspiracy as opposed to fact, but there is also just the working thing, right? And it says in Iron John about that, where sometimes the mother will want to make sure that the affection is secured by the boy towards her, you know. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, we got to bring awareness to it, you know. And rites of passage, I see a lot of men's groups out there. Most of the men's groups are operating through the feminine lens. They're operating from a feminized lens, which it's all about going to your men's group and crying and screaming and kicking and yelling and venting and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, there's a real lack of men's groups that solve problems. That's what my one does specifically, is we solve problems together. And there's a men's group, I think it's called The Shed, where men will go into the shed and have a piece of machinery that they all work on and fix together. That's what we're meant to do. We're meant to go to war together, shoulder to shoulder, fix things together, build things together. Masculinity is conflict conquering machinery. That's what we're supposed to do. And so initiating the boy into self-sufficiency, understanding himself independent of the required needs being met from the mother, which is just climbing back into the womb. That's it. It's sink into the amniotic wonderland of the unconscious rather than becoming conscious and into the solar masculine, into the world of light. And we do that by fixing things. There's no greater thing to work on than yourself. Mm-hmm. It's the greatest opportunity. And where we've lost it is a lot of men now go into these rites of passage, or quote unquote rites of passage, and what they're embracing is actually the celebratory mechanisms of different tribes, where they're dancing around the fire and singing and all that. That was done after the initiation was complete. So in some tribes it might be, here's a deer skin full of psychedelics, go and kill a leopard. If I see you again, great, we'll dance around the fire. If we don't, well then that was your path. But most people are just doing the celebration instead of the the initiation. What I believe and what I've seen is that relationships are the new initiation. Modern relationships are the new initiation. That's why men have lost the ability to navigate heartbreak. They don't understand it fully. They don't understand how to process the grief as they go through it, because it's so brutal, because they're splitting from the construct of the mother internally. So there's going to be a major identity shift as a result of that. So whether or not we bring back rites of passage, life is going to initiate you into that regardless of whether you want to do it or not.
Mhm.
And that's usually done through grief, the death of father, mother, someone close, loss, financial status, identity, and grief will be the byproduct of that through heartbreak. Usually all three. And if you don't do it by 35, life's going to fuck you up and get it done for you, because that's what happened to me. And I've seen that now in hundreds of men I've worked with through this process, and looking back, thousands of people now that I see go through this as well at the same time. So life will come for you. Life will come for you one way or another.
You know, something I've talked about in our community. I may have brought up in the podcast before, but yeah, when I moved to Los Angeles after living in New York City for about a decade, yeah, I was 34 and I got into a relationship. I wouldn't say the healthiest relationship, but it was the first time that I was broken up with. And it was after a really short-term, intense thing, 34 years old. And that was a major initiation for me, you know, like I would not be the man I am today for my wife if I didn't have that experience, you know, and dealt with everything that came from that. It was an eye opener for me. So like a lot of people ask me about some great experiences in my life, and that's in there. As much as it fucking sucked, it's in there, and I'm grateful that I had the experience to allow me to take the next step forward. Because I feel like a lot of people don't go through that experience, or like they have the experience, but they don't handle it as healthily as possible, or they turn to substance abuse. They keep distracting themselves and self-medicating, as opposed to, fuck, let me go into the fire and see what comes out after this.
Yeah. And they try to, you see the midlife crisis in men. Crisis precedes evolution. And what will happen with men is they try to hold on to that boy psychology. And quite often, you know, I'm 42 now, you'll see men, they'll get divorced, they'll split from the family, get a younger woman, get the red sports car. All of that is to try to maintain relevancy instead of moving into, if we could look at archetypally, like the king or, you know, an elder position where they mentor the next generation coming up. What they do is they kind of, you know, they kick and scream and all that sort of stuff and try to hold on to their psychology, creating so much resistance in them. They often get sick at that point. You know, cancer might be produced, or a major health crisis will come in as you're doing that, if you don't actually allow yourself to move through the fire in the right way.
Hey, Jag, what do you think, like, an ideal way, a man's masculine, woman's feminine, but then you have these women that are like, their personality, like for years and decades, they're like really masculine. And then you have men that are like more feminine. Like, do you expect that their just entire personality is going to like shift and change for the better? Like, how does that work? You know, because I feel like there's just so much more nuance and variety in types of people in terms of like, how do they get into relationships that work for them? Like, is a feminine man all of a sudden going to be like rah rah, taking the sword out and like going to battle? You know, so like, what is the solution for people like that are like, hey, like, I don't think you're gonna, you know, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Look, and I think that's an important aspect to it. And this is what I say. I'm like, not every man is cut out to be a protector and provider anymore. They're just not. Like, I think it's probably 10%, maybe 15%. They're the guys that I work with. I like to work with guys that are in that space. It may not work for you. You know, there are some women that are incredibly masculine, and it's usually as a result of trauma, because generally a lot of people like that, they don't want to have kids, they operate independently, the men don't procreate. Nature just goes, all right, well, you're not in the prime spot to be able to procreate. Your programming doesn't work with the prime directive of nature, which is continuity. So that won't happen. And that's okay. Like, if it works for you and you're a masculine woman and you're the boss babe and you go get her and you want to be with a feminine man, have at it. Like, if that works for you, go for it. Like, I'm not saying that this needs to be for everyone. And this is where I think a lot of people get my message confused, is live your life, man. If you want to be single, if you want to be a hermit, if you want to live in a cave, if you want to do yoga and whatever, do it. I don't care. My message isn't for you. My work's not for you. But I know there are a lot of women that have taken on that masculine aspect that are tired, man. I get messages every single day from women saying, how do I drop into my feminine to get a man that's more masculine? And how do I make sure I don't devour my son? Those are the two most common messages. And man, women have had enough of men being that really soft, overly emotional, which they admit. They're like, I encouraged this and then I got what I wanted. Then I realized it's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But you got to do the work to kind of step up to want to honor your biology.
Yeah.
I think in German medicine, I spoke to Brandon Bozarth about this. He's like, an alpha male is just a man without the distortion internally of conflict that's in his male energy. I think men have really lost the connection to their maleness, to be comfortable in their maleness. I've had conversations with Joelle. I'm like, I'm a protector and provider. If you want the fantasy novel and the romance novel, I'm not your guy. Not saying that she wanted that, but I make it very clear. I'm like, just women should be happy and satisfied with just a man willing to look after them and take care of them and not fulfill a role that's not meant for them. I had a funny message and phone call. I had this woman message me. She's like, my husband's strong, he's masculine, he's contained, he's all of this, but I just want him to be more emotionally available. What should I do? And I said, be fucking grateful you've got a good man. How about that, instead of trying to change it?
See, dude, I love that you said that, because you see this often in relationships where like a woman does have like a good man. He doesn't like beat her, like he handles his business, but maybe they don't have the same interests, or maybe he isn't doing consciousness work, or he isn't, emotionally available in the same way. And it's like people blow up their fucking lives for this, because I've had conversation with friends of mine who have done that. And then what's on the other side is kind of like brings more misery into their life. And I've heard them say, oh man, I wish I didn't like leave my husband. Now I get it, there's a fine line there, but I kind of like what you said, like be fucking grateful.
Yeah.
I love how
like,
Erasmus's definition of a good man is he doesn't beat her.
Well, I just mean, like, listen, I would just he doesn't beat you, like he's a good father. Like maybe you don't have the same interest. Maybe he doesn't want to fucking get a human design fucking reading, or he doesn't want to, do the things that you're into, and so I think women are fed these things of what their man needs to be and need to tick every single fucking box. And it's like, well, just do your thing, focus on your shit, and let your man be a man. As a general rule. Like I know it's more nuanced than this, but still.
Yeah, I agree. You're gonna say something, Joel?
Well, I was gonna just, I guess, beg the question, like this whole concept of a man being emotionally available for his wife, like what is the right dose, I guess?
Yeah, so the way that I look at that is have the space where you can be contained and non-reactive while she goes through her emotions, not spilling out with your emotions. I do this with Joelle. I can tell when she needs something and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, nothing. I'm like, come here. And I just get her to sit on my lap. She'll have a cry. And then I have her laughing within 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't make it about trying to fix her. I don't be like, I need you to hold space for me now. If you're in a place where you have to say to your woman, I need you to hold space for me, go get a coach, go get a therapist. That's if you're in that space, that's where you should go. Or you're acting like a little boy and expecting her to be your mum. So I think it's about emotionally available is actually being available for her emotions without taking it personally. Every really solid man that I've met doesn't take a woman's emotions personally. That's where I think it comes down to it. And what happens if you want to do it from a masculine perspective, I'm like, yeah, look, I'm frustrated, or, I'm feeling this at the moment. This is going on for me, but I'm going to go do this to fix it. I need an hour and I'll come back to you. That's taking action. Testosterone goes up from that. So it's when we conquer that conflict, that's what I think is the best thing for men. But what I find is women that want men to be really emotionally available and open all the time, generally they had a father they couldn't trust, and so they're seeking certainty and safety through predictability with the man rather than trying to guess because they grew up in an environment that was unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's just about communicating too. You don't need to like wallow in your emotions, but like, hey, like I'm dealing with some shit right now. I got it. I'm handling it. I got to go do what I got to do. Like, I feel like that's a level of emotional availability, as opposed to, my man doesn't say anything to me at all, ever. I have no idea what's going on. Like, and so just, I think just being able to make a statement and communicate that, I feel like very often is enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's an important point, is that women see it now black and white. If he's not endlessly emoting, he's somehow suppressed. It's like our biology works differently. Our pathways are denser. You know, one of the things that I've heard is when a woman's transitioning to a man, when they're given hormones, they're warned. They say, well, and this, I could be wrong, but I've heard this from people, so I'm not an expert in this. They say your emotions are going to be blunted significantly, so you need to be prepared for that. And we don't feel emotions as intensely as a woman. And that should be honored in the woman, but it also should be honored in the man, that we just don't process things the same way. Operates from a different part of the nervous system, different part of the brain. Like, if we honor each other's differences, we'd have an easier time understanding each other instead of trying to make the other person similar to us. Sameness doesn't create polarity.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like, it feels like there's the real potential for like people to get so overwhelmed with these relationship conversations, like I'm so fucked, or there's so much for me to kind of hold in the tension of opposites to kind of be this way and shift this way. And like, doesn't it feel like in some capacity, like this conversation can be so complex when it comes to how to healthily relate in relationships?
Yeah, look, I do agree, because there's a lot of pop psychology out there which has done more damage to relationships, in my opinion, than good. Everyone out there is meet my needs, you've got to meet my needs. And I just tell people, do the opposite. Just what does your partner want? The one thing that they want. And just meet that every day. Joelle has no upper limit for touch and affection. So I make sure every day I touch her, I make her feel special, I tell her she's beautiful every day without fail, and I give her time. So we might take the dog for a walk at night, we'll do it every day. I make sure we do a date type of thing every day. She gets the attention she needs, then she's like, okay, you can go do your thing. With me, it's words of affirmation and acts of service. I love it when she makes food for me. I wake up in the morning when it's early and there'll be breakfast. She'll make my water for me, whatever it is. Those are the things that mean the most to me. So we build our relationship around single structures. We have one shared value, which is peace. We have one shared vision, which is family. We have one shared purpose, which is clean up anything from childhood. That's it. Relationships don't have to be that complicated. I feel it's when we're projecting all our trauma onto the other person, that's where it becomes difficult. When you don't know where you're going, you don't know why you're in it, you don't know what's in your history, then yeah, like relationships is going to surface all of that. But when you work as a team and you're like, we're going to confront this together as opposed to against each other,
Yeah.
I just find it's a much easier way to do things.
Yeah.
Hey, Jag, did you always want to be a husband and be a father, or is it something that you grew into as you continued your own work and healing?
No, I grew into. And one of the fascinating things that I read, I picked up King Warrior Magician Lover again, maybe it was this year, last 12 months. And in the start, there's like a foreword or an introduction. And it's about a psychiatrist that works with schizophrenic people. And he helps them to liberate the energy that they're going through at the time. And all of them are having visions or dreams about kings and battles and conquering and all this stuff. And what he found out is that they were actually evolving from a warrior type of archetype into a king archetype. Once they went through that transition, the schizophrenia went away. Okay, so they were healed by liberating the emotional and psychic energy that was going on. What happened is when I got out of that last relationship and my dad died, I started to dream about kings and battles all the time. And I didn't realize it. But I did realize it, but I didn't realize what I was in. So when I was going through a natural evolution of the psyche and I got through it, that was where I was like, the husband and father is the only thing left for me to really do. And it was in my being. And now that's going to happen. Joelle and I'll get married in the first half of next year, and hopefully be pregnant by the second half of next year. And so it wasn't always there. I used to be a playboy and all that immature boy psychology stuff I used to run around with, thinking that my worth was defined by material objects or status, or martial arts, whatever, all that stuff that we need to go through to transcend. And as I was mentioning earlier, like materialism used to be a big thing. now the most satisfying thing is being able to take care of my family. And that's where I think you move into either the king archetype, elder. I don't know. I don't really like the whole king thing because people think you're like, oh, I'm a king and whatever, and it's a bit arrogant, but the archetype exists in the collective unconscious. And I think that when you get to that point legitimately, family, if you don't have it, is going to be something that really sits in your biological makeup, which is a deep, deep knowing that needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to speak into what would probably be bubbling up to the surface for those listening, because I loved your answer about simplifying in relationship with like one shared vision, one purpose, etc. And not to throw shade on anyone, but the reality is like it changes as the kids come into the picture, new stuff comes up, etc.
Sure.
Which is
Yeah, I think that's important, that relationships are ever evolving. And one of the things I say is who you are last year, you should be different next year if you're actively doing the work. And I think that that's a really important point, that the family changes when new beings come in. Now, I don't have children, so I can only speak from theoretical. I know that you do, Joel, so you'd be much more handy at speaking to that. And I'm sure each member of the family that comes in, the family then becomes different.
Oh yeah.
So to think that things are static, that's definitely not the way that I see things. And the relationships are there for evolution and healing.
Yep.
Not just to satisfy your needs, your own grandiose needs, and be like, no, this is all about me, which is most pop psych talks about. This is about evolution, healing, and continuity. That's what relationships are for.
Absolutely, man. And like with that in mind, it's like my personal experience is that the relationship is like an ongoing rite of passage. Like it's not one thing. Like the evolutionary process of it causes you to go through so many, transmutative processes, like things that you can't even comprehend, which you're going to have to go through at certain points in time, especially if, both people are committed to living and being as truthful and as conscious as possible, and it's like, that's not a negative thing. It can feel really hard and negative in a certain moment, but it's like the descent is necessary at certain periods of time. And to embrace the descent as, a very important and powerful part of the whole picture of what it looks like to grow as a human being.
Yeah, and to go back to exactly what I said before, is that relationships are the modern initiation.
Yeah.
So when we see it like that, we can see it through a new set of eyes, because I think the way that we're relating in the world at the moment is very immature.
Sorry, guys, this conversation was so fire that Jag's power cut out. Jag, welcome back. You were talking about relationships as the modern initiation and just expanding on that.
Yeah, so I think I was saying where it cut out, I was obviously dropping bombs and system overload from that. That we address relationships now from a very immature perspective. And I think that's where we've gotten into trouble, with a lot of childlike psychology running rampant at the moment. And we can see it with, people just wanting their needs met before anything else. We see the rise of dating apps where people are just so addicted to romantic love that they just keep jumping from person to person to person with this high level of stimulation. And when things get difficult, they're just like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I see that as a big problem in relationships now, where it's me against you, not us against the issue. And it's very immature because people just want their own needs met all the time.
Such an addiction to pleasure, it seems like, in the world too. Like, it's like, I need pleasure. I need more and more pleasure. And if I'm not getting it, then I'm out.
Yeah. At the same time, the world is becoming so much less pleasurable and like less sexual. And like, you read these studies on like these kids that nowadays, like they're completely not interested in like sex at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well with the rise of screens and blue light and disconnection from nature, lack of initiation, like we said, split up homes, loss of traditional values, disconnection from God. I mean, the social engineers have done a good job.
Yeah. And by the way, when I said kids not being interested in sex, obviously, I mean like older kids, like teenagers who I refer to as kids now that I'm, 35 years old. So don't take that the wrong way, anybody.
Yeah, I think we are. I certainly got the point. But yeah,
like we're so cancelled here, bro. We're so cancelled here. Between your ass, what's the definition of a good man? And now this.
Yeah.
Listen, women, if your man doesn't beat you, you better be fucking grateful and make him a sandwich.
We're definitely going to get cancelled for that.
Hey, bro, so many people come into our world, women,
Mhm.
who, like, in my opinion, like, are really good women. Like, there's a healthy level of masculinity that's been integrated, which is essential, in my opinion. They've been in previous relationships which haven't worked out, that they entered into for the wrong reasons. They have a kid and they're single mothers, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how does this kind of situation, how do they offer their sons the right dose of masculinity when it's not present and they're just going through a phase of life when it's not there, and who knows if it might ever be there?
hmm Yeah, this is the question that I get asked. I mentioned before every single day. I'm like, grandfather, uncles,
Mhm.
brothers, teachers, martial arts, getting out into nature. There's ways to expose it. Masculinity isn't dead. It's just kind of sleeping at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's a really important thing to say, okay, if you can get him into martial arts, do it, but don't stay there and watch him leave so he can become independent. So he can go into and do his stuff, and then you leave and you come back and get him later. Being around other boys of different ages is very important as well. And I'm sure you guys know in tribes, we're not hanging around kids the same age all the time. You go to school and you got 200 kids in the same year. There's not a whole lot of development except a bunch of kids at the same age, at the same psychological development, doing the same dumb shit. Whereas if you've got older kids, if you're 8, then you've got a younger one, a couple of older ones, you get exposed to different levels of maturity, which is much healthier than going into the school system to do it. So there's always ways around it to be able to do it. I think the biggest thing, or the most important thing, is to help men understand that when the woman goes from maiden to mother, she becomes different. There's probably going to be a period where you may not have as much physical intimacy as you want. Be prepared for that. I've already started to prepare for that when Joelle has our child. It's like the first 6 months, and Joel, again, I'm speaking from intellectual and research here, not direct experience, but I'm prepared for that. 6 to 12 months of just making sure that those two are okay. I just go, you guys are taken care of, and that's all I care about. Most men don't understand that. And then they think that she's still the maiden when she's become the mother. When they're still, you could say and the work around the internal anima hasn't been done, or the internal feminine, or the splitting from the mother, or the dismantling of the programming, that starts to come out in that first 6 to 12 months when they become the mother. And there can be a repellent force to it. The woman can, sit there and see that the man hasn't stepped up. She's become a mother, he's still a boy, and now she's got 2 children. And it creates a lot of disharmony in relationships. And I always see that, it's a big thing to leave someone in the first 6 to 12 months of having a baby. Like, it's a big thing. And when I see that, I'm sort of like, oh, this isn't good when they do, unless they're obviously being abused or something bad. But a lot of women are just like, no, you're not stepping up to the plate, I'm out.
Yeah.
Which is that self-serving need.
Or like, it's, the father flees,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking more like where there's a willful separation as
Yeah.
opposed to just a disappearance, right? The woman doesn't have any issue with that. But at the same time, it's like we need to understand what happens after. What are the changes that are going to take place? And most men just don't bother looking at that. Then all of a sudden they have a kid, they want to keep playing Peter Pan, and she's become a mother, and it's just it doesn't work, and it breaks the family up.
Yeah. What does it look like, I guess leaning back on the Iron John material a little bit, to kind of like re-embrace the father on an archetypal sense for a son, and like, how can that benefit him?
Yeah, this podcast has been great. It's probably my favorite one we've done, actually, because this is so important. And we have to, firstly, if we're a man, become like the father we didn't have. That's the first thing that we really have to look at. The second thing is, I was just working with a guy yesterday on this. His father was in and out of prison up until he was 13, then he died. And now he wants to help be around younger boys at around that 13, 14, 15, at that pivotal stage, to act like a surrogate father in a way. Just be around healthy masculinity, go hiking, go fishing, whatever. The aspect of it, it doesn't really matter in the execution of the events that you do together. It's the exposure to the programming, which is important. So we need more older men stepping up into wanting to be the elder, even if they're not fathers, but assuming the elder archetype and taking responsibility. And firstly, men have to be self-responsible. A lot of men don't want to be self-responsible anymore. They want the woman to do things for them. They want to abdicate responsibility and leadership. Men are built to lead. Men lead in care, men lead in direction, women lead in connection. And so when men actually take control of their lives and say, no, I'm not doing this anymore, that naturally will start to harness the masculine programming that's already within us. We don't even actually have to do that much. We just have to stop pretending that we're someone that we're not.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, I just want to say it, even though it's obvious, but it's like, I just want to encourage, like, as a call to action for like all men to be like really conscious of how important this is in terms of how they relate to other men, and particularly younger men that they're connected to, and to embrace these qualities and to embrace sincerity, and to like really like be stewards of like holding the flame of archetypal masculinity in culture and in society, like just as, an actual call to action to like make this a conscious effort in one's life. I just think it's fucking paramount.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it'll come through, it will happen. Nature will force it upon us to correct. Nature will always clean up the most wounded parts of itself. And the most wounded part at the moment is the human being. And so nature and life, God, whatever your word is for it, I think it's all synonymous really, is going to initiate you if you're meant to be doing that. So the masculine programming, it's like, get comfortable with it again. It doesn't mean you need to have kids. It doesn't mean you need to be an alpha male protector. And there's a reason why a lot of the social narratives go after the red pill men, red pill alpha bros. It's like when people say that, they probably haven't read the body of work, because I can't remember who said it. It's like every movement starts as a movement, then it becomes a business, then it becomes a racket. And so like feminism and red pill, the ideology in and of itself at its fundamental roots isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's what people have done with it that has become the problem. Red pill is a praxeology. Feminism is about equal rights. And what it turns into when you start to use the movement to prey on the wounds of the person, and that starts to become an issue. Like, I'm unapologetically male. I like being a man. I love being on purpose. I absolutely love taking care of my woman and being a protector and provider. I don't give a fuck if people think that that's controlling or it's toxic. If that's toxic, cool. I'm toxic, great. I'm not going to listen to someone that's not willing to take up those attributes as a way to try to demonize me because they can't fulfill the role. And generally what I see, the people that tear it down about a bad experience with men, so it's like it's all men that are bad when they've probably dated 5 men in their life or 10 men, and then all of a sudden every man's bad. Or the men that are doing it, they can't step up to the plate. They can't be the protector. They can't be the provider. So the only thing they can do is tear it down, because the admittance of their own failure is too big to take on. So they have to make it the failure of men. And if you're a man that wants to do it, honor your biology, honor your masculine psychological programming. I think masculinity is just the psychological software of the male biological hardware. When that's in harmony, that's what I see. The male representation will start to come out. You can integrate the feminine aspects, and I believe that life is about integration. But there's a reason why, in my opinion, when people say, I've got to balance my feminine and masculine energies and, we're just one and all that, I think there's a dominant one in each person. And I think that if it was all about just pure feminine and masculine, then why can't you self-impregnate and just be self-sufficient beings? So biology has created a separation for a reason. And that's what I look to. I look at what's in front of me. So honoring your biology as a man will make you feel good. Like, I love it when, I see Joey thriving or she's making her flowers and stuff like that. Like, passion is a big thing for me to see in a woman. It's not ambition, but it's passion. And so when she's passionate about something, like she loves flowers, she's very feminine. So when I see her in the garden doing flowers or doing something she loves, that I'm like, my job is done. I'm good for today, and then I'll get up and do it again tomorrow. It's great to look after a woman. Not every woman's some gold digger that just wants to marry you and take your money. And if that's your lens, it's kind of the same as women that say all men are rapists, all men are killers and all that sort of stuff. That's not true either. You know, there's nuance to this, and we're complex beings. And when we take a reductionist angle, it means you got work to do.
So Jag, speaking of the nuance, so from a psychological standpoint, you mentioned earlier like the integration of the anima. Like if a man healthily integrating, let's say, the feminine aspect, what does that look like? To you?
Containment.
Okay.
It's just containment. Containment is your capacity to be with difficult things while not spilling out onto those around you. Remaining calm. And one thing that does grind on me a bit is how stoicism gets a bad rap. The people that criticize stoicism don't understand stoicism. It never says repress your feelings in it. It doesn't say that anywhere. It's to become a master of your emotions. So you can still be stoic while going through a big, difficult thing. You can still act stoic while you're in a difficult circumstance. And I think that that's a big, important part of containment, is being able to communicate and have the relationship, we could say, with your inner anima or your feelings or emotions, whatever. So this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I'm going to do about it. I don't want it to spill out on you. Or in a exchange, say, hey, look, I get it, but I'm not going to continue indulging this with you because it's just going to keep going, and I'm not going to allow that right now. It's about being contained. So when the man is contained, he becomes, in my opinion, trustworthy because he's consistent and reliable. These are hardwired traits of masculinity, in my opinion.
Well said.
Thanks, man.
Not a question, an important question, because it's escaped me right now. Lack of containment.
Jag, are you still practicing jujitsu?
No, this is an awesome question. No, I stopped 2 years ago, and right when I hit 40, I tore my ACL, did a 7-centimeter bucket handle tear in my meniscus, got a Baker's cyst, and then injured the discs in my back, and then tore an adductor as well. So it was like, I realized at that time, the biggest struggle I was going through was putting down the warrior archetype. And so because I wouldn't do it willfully or psychologically, my body made me do it. And that was as I went through the big healing process. Really interestingly, and this kind of sums this up, when I first started martial arts, I was like 23 or something, and I walked into the gym and there was an old school MMA fighter, and he was in his 50s, but he would take on the old MMA stuff where you could headbutt, you could bite, like hectic stuff. And I went in there full of testosterone at 23 and was like, man, what's the best self-defense? And he goes, well, there's no such thing as an MMA punch or anything like that. They're different systems together. I said, yeah, but I want to know, from a self-defense perspective, what's the best one? And he goes, don't be there. And I went, that's not satisfying for me. And then a couple of years ago, when I got out of doing jiu-jitsu and all of that, I went, oh, now I get what he's saying, because it's like I've trained enough to realize that I wouldn't fight unless I was protecting someone. But if I had to protect someone, I'd be more inclined to get them out of there, as opposed to try to fight, because you increase the risk if you actually try to fight someone. And so that was very much part of the journey of putting down that quote unquote warrior archetype, because I was using jiu-jitsu to process a lot, but it was also from a place of fear. Really, a 15-year martial arts journey was from a place of fear. And it was to be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu and all of that stuff. Now I realize it's, there's so many other ways to be able to not fight, but jiu-jitsu taught me how not to fight. And as I went into the evolution of my own psyche and healed, same with tattooing. Tattooing is a point of getting out your aggression. I've got an unfinished one on my back. I'm not going to finish that. Why would I put my body through that? Same as why would I get into a fight? It's just dumb, But when you're looking through the lens of the warrior, it's like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when you can fight, everything produces a potential threat. Now I don't see the world as a threat anymore. I actually see the world as quite a beautiful, peaceful place. And I want to bring peace into life. And that's why peace is the number one value that I live by now, to the best of my ability.
I love it.
So long answer to that is no, I don't do it anymore because I don't need it anymore. Now my favorite thing is walking and getting into nature, being with my dog, being with Joey, getting up early, being healthy, feeling good. That's the stuff that matters to me now.
I think
Simple
I
and
think that's
beautiful.
the actual answer to your question of what does it mean for a man to integrate the anima.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. All right, man. Bro, such a pleasure. Thank you so much once again Just a quick question. You're obviously with a woman named Joelle. Is there any like thing happening there, like an unconscious urge to want to be with a Joel, but you ended up with a Joelle, or
You're hilarious, bro.
Oh, man,
You-
we'll leave that for another podcast,
Yeah, yeah.
though.
dude, this conversation has been a fucking wealth of value, man. Really excited for people to hear this one, for sure. Is there anything like in closing that's present for you that you feel like you just want to get out as a general message?
Yeah, look, I think the world needs masculinity in men again. And I do think we're going to go back to a more masculine society soon because we've seen the madness over the last decade. And, Yuri Bezmenov and his subversion ideology, we've been in that. And I think people have seen the madness of that.
Mhm.
And I think it's good to be a man. Don't apologize for being a man. Life will initiate you one way or another. You're going to have to go on the quest. It's for the man to take up. That's our thing. It's about slaying the dragon. It's always the dragon fight. So I think that what I would implore men to do is start to honor their biology again, honor their masculinity. Women need it, children need it, and we've failed society as it stands because when men behave badly, everyone behaves badly. And society is a byproduct of men not stepping up. So by virtue of us stepping up, society will take a correction, which I think it's in at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised in the next 5 years if we see a major correction back to a masculine world. And you want to be a man that is able to step into that with responsibility, containment, and inner authority. And we need men to go back to understanding their inner authority. And that's by doing the work. That's the fight of our times, is the war internally, not externally. And so that's what I'd like to leave with that.
Love it, man. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for the work that you're doing. It's good to connect again. We'll have another podcast next year.
Yeah,
Once again.
awesome. Christmas every year.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, where would you like to direct our audience at this point in time, man?
Just my Instagram, man. Pure Jaguar is it. Pretty much everything's on there. I'm doing a heavy focus on splitting from the mother at the moment. Surprisingly, I'm getting more kickback from men than anything else about it, which I never would have thought. I'm actually getting a ton of support from women. And men are like, yeah, your mother carried your worthless ass for 18 years, or, you're pathetic and rah, whatever. I'm like, this is exactly why you need to split, because that's an uncomfortable truth you're not willing to face. But, I don't shy away from controversy.
Bro, I think it's just mothers who have control of their sons' Instagram pages that are commenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conspiracy of
Probably.
our times. Cool, man.
Awesome. Pure Jaguar, Instagram. Hit me up.
Perfect, bro. Lots of love. Everyone else, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, fellas.
Always an awesome conversation with Jag. And I just want to say, in closing, if you feel the call, Friends of the Truth, our membership community, is going to be capped at 200 members. We are very close to the 150 member threshold at the moment, and tier pricing is going to continue to increase the closer that we get to 200. And ultimately, we are rewarding those that see the value of Friends of the Truth early. And the value, in my personal opinion, is undeniable. And this is simply a call to action that anyone that has been sitting on the fence or is feeling that urge wants to dive into our community, which is, just so full of knowledge, wisdom, vibrancy, laughter, wholeness. And more people are coming in that are just so incredible in their own unique fields. Then I would get off the fence pretty soon, is all I'm going to say on that matter. Because in the coming months, it genuinely does appear that we're going to be reaching the final stages of intake when it comes to Friends of the Truth. So we'd love to see you inside. Most importantly, if you join, please come into the Telegram community. This is where the juice really occurs. Introduce yourself and take advantage of the most important aspect of the community, which is connecting with other dope and awesome human beings on this path. You can find all that at hereforthetruth.com/FOTT. We'll see you soon.